In recent years, Brazil has had many UFO sightings and is a high incidence area for UFO sightings worldwide. But the most famous in Brazilian history is the 1957 alien abduction incident. A farmer named Vilas claimed that he was taken to a UFO by a group of unidentified creatures and described the interior of the UFO in great detail. It is noteworthy that this incident has many similarities to the 1994 Meng Zhao incident in China. Both claim to have had an encounter with an extraterrestrial female creature. Many people believe that Vilas was only seeking fame, but as a farmer with low education, he was able to describe things beyond his knowledge. It is worth noting that this abduction incident happened earlier than the world-famous Hill alien abduction case. This incident made the concept of alien abductions well known and opened the door to similar reports. Today, let's talk about this incident and its fascinating details. In a hot country like Brazil, most field work is done at night. One night in November 1957, a 23-year-old farmer named Antonio Vilas returned home after finishing work on the farm. He slept in a room with his brother. That night, he suddenly noticed a bright light shining in the middle of the room. However, there was no light source, and the light was moving. Initially, he thought it was moonlight, so he went to close the shutter. After closing the window, the light disappeared. 2 days later, Vilas and his brother were working in the field as usual. His brother was driving a red tractor to plow the land. At this time, Vilas noticed a red light next to the moon, motionless in the sky. The red light became lower and lower, and even the distant crops were covered in red light. Vilas felt that there must be an object behind the red light. He wanted to walk into it to observe, but the light went out every time he approached. Only when he backed away to a certain distance would the light reappear. After a while, the red light disappeared completely. Another day passed, and Vilas' brother went to town. That night, only Vilas was driving the tractor to plow the land. At 1 o'clock in the morning, he saw the red dot again getting bigger and bigger and seemed to be flying towards him, emitting dazzling red light. When the red dot flew directly above the tractor, the entire tractor was covered in red light. The object was about 50 meters above the ground. Vilas looked up and saw that the object was disc-shaped with a circle of purple lights around it and several pointed tips protruding from the tail as if it were slowly descending. Vilas felt scared and tried to start the tractor to escape, but he found that the tractor could not start. He jumped off the tractor and ran wildly, but before he could run far, he felt that he was caught by several people wearing diving suits. There were 3 people in total, and one of them lightly potted him. Vilas immediately became paralyzed and unable to move. Later, Vilas was taken to the UFO by those people, and it felt like he was floating in the air. He saw that the UFO was all white and had a ceramic-like texture. There were 3 things that looked like landing gear at the bottom. After entering the UFO, Vilas found that it was all silver inside and was shining with a hazy white light. However, he could walk on his own inside the UFO and was no longer floating. After the door of the UFO closed, it merged completely with the entire UFO, and there was no visible gap. Vilas was taken to a room with 5 people in total. These people were all wearing protective suits with a red light on their chest. They only had 4 fingers and wore something like a diving helmet on their heads. They also had clothes connected to several tubes. Through the mask, Vilas discovered that these people had green skin and blue eyes. They should be green-skinned people. Later, these people started taking off his clothes. Vilas was very scared and did not know what they were going to do. He started screaming, but these people ignored him until he was completely naked. Then one of them applied a sticky transparent gel-like substance all over his body. After that, these people all left. The door on the wall merged with the wall again, leaving Vilas alone. Not long after, 2 people came in holding 2 containers connected by a soft tube. Without saying anything, they put one of the containers on Vilas's chin and operated on the other container. Blood immediately filled the container, but the whole process was painless. Vilas was sitting naked in the room. Suddenly, several suction tubes emerged from the walls and sprayed some gas into the room. Vilas felt very uncomfortable. His head was dizzy and the smoke was getting thicker. He ran to the wall and vomited. After a while, a soothing voice like that of a tropical rainforest sounded in the room, and the door on the wall opened. A female who looked like a human appeared. Vilas described her as more beautiful than any woman he had ever seen, but he couldn't pinpoint what was strange about her. Last, he remembered that the woman had red body hair. Although she looked very much like a human, Vilas thought it was unlikely that she was one. The woman didn't speak, hugged Vilas, and they had sex. Afterwards, the woman touched her belly, pointed to the sky with her fingers, and smiled faintly. Vilas believed that the woman meant that he would father their child and raise it on another planet. Then the woman took Vilas to another room, dressed him, and left. In the room were the three people who had previously kidnapped him, still wearing protective suits. They pointed to the door, indicating that Vilas could leave. At this point, Vilas saw a clock-like square box on the table and wanted to take it to prove that he had been on the flying saucer. But one of the people immediately took the box away and then led Vilas out of the UFO. After landing on the ground, the person gestured for him to step back because they were taking off. The UFO made no sound, turned red, and disappeared at a very fast speed, leaving Vilas alone. Vilas returned to the red tractor and found that it could start again. When he returned home, more than 4 hours had passed, but he felt like the entire process had only lasted a few minutes. After this encounter, Vilas felt extremely fatigued and was drowsy every day. He found bruises on his arms and legs, which were strange and regular in shape, and lasted for several months. He didn't tell anyone, including his brother, who returned to the farm a few days later. Months later, he saw a magazine article about Dr. Fontes, an internist and UFO expert. They met in Sao Paulo. Fonseca examined Vilas and believed that the bruises were caused by high levels of radiation. With the help of a doctor, Vilas recalled what happened several months ago and described the appearance of the aliens and their equipment. He also described the appearance of the UFO, a large disc with 3 protrusions behind it, one of which was long like a tail. With the help of an artist, Vilas also described the appearance of the female with whom he had a relationship, but the drawing did not look as good as Vilas had described. Her head was clearly large, her chin was pointed, and her body was small like a hybrid of a human and a small gray alien. However, when Vilas wanted to make it public, the media received a notification from the Brazilian Security Department not to publish the story to avoid causing public panic. It was not until 1965 that a journalist wrote a detailed report that was published in a magazine. The story spread around the world and caused a sensation. The term alien abduction also appeared in the public eye. Your Notes also recorded the interview with Vilas. Vilas added that the alien woman told him that he would give birth to their child in a safe place. Perhaps many years later, Vilas could see the child in some way. However, until Vilas died in 1991, no one knew whether he had seen the child or not. American renowned writer Whitley Strieber and scholar specializing in Indian Tantra Jeffrey Kripal collaborated to publish a best-selling book named The Supernatural in 2016. The book mentioned that as early as several thousand years ago, India had experienced events such as temples with red light flying and human abductions with sexual intercourse. Indian Tantra believes that this is a kind of guidance from God on some level. If this is true, then have alien abductions of humans been occurring in the past several thousand or even tens of thousands of years? In the following years, Vilas continued to claim that his story was entirely true, but there were many doubts about the incident. Vilas, the protagonist of this alien abduction incident, was a farmer. Although he described many things beyond his own knowledge, his descriptions did not exceed that era. For example, he described the aliens wearing clothing similar to diving suits and carrying something like a diving helmet. It should be noted that in 1957, 4 years before the first astronaut Gagarin went into space, Vilas did not know what a spacesuit looked like. The only thing he could refer to was deep-sea diving suits. In the 1950s, the concepts of Martians and aliens became popular worldwide, with various comics and movies emerging. Vilas' description of UFOs and aliens combined the two perfectly. For example, he described UFOs as large discs with tripod legs, similar to the classic image of Martians. The little green men also had green skin and blue eyes, but what set them apart was the introduction of the concept of alien abduction of humans, which was not yet a popular topic at the time. Therefore, after this abduction event, many similar alien abduction events occurred around the world, with many claiming to have had sexual encounters with aliens. Abductees claimed that aliens were beautiful and advanced, sometimes hundreds of years old. Others claimed they were chosen for hybridization to inject new blood into these alien races. Furthermore, this event has many similarities to the later Meng Zhao event in China. Both were farmers, but they said things that went beyond their status. The combination of the two leaves unlimited room for imagination. Meng Zhao claimed to have had a relationship with an alien woman who became pregnant with his child. The details of the floating cabin door merging with the wall are identical to Villa's. Even the UFOs look similar, with a disc shape and a long tail. Villa's claimed to have seen a clock-like object floating in a square box inside a UFO, while Meng Zhao claimed to have seen a stone-like object floating in a square box, with many similarities between the two men's accounts. In the 1980s, UFOs and aliens were also popular in China. Magazines like UFO Exploration Mysteries were first published in the 1980s and should have reported on this famous alien abduction case in Brazil. Meng Zhao was likely influenced by the content combined with his own imagination to say those things. Of course, only Villas and Meng Zhao know the truth of what happened.
Thank you so much for taking the time to watch our videos. If you like our content, please don't forget to subscribe and like. It will support us to continue to create more great content.